Welcome to the Home Builder Digital Marketing Podcast. Over 90% of today's home buyers start their buyer journey online. Here we talk with not only industry experts, but also your fellow home builder marketers to learn how you can succeed in our incredibly competitive digital world. And now, here are your hosts, Greg Bray and Kevin Weitzel.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Home Builder Digital Marketing Podcast. I'm Greg Bray with Blue Tangerine.
And I'm Kevin Weitzel with Outhouse.
And we are excited to have joining us today on the show, Matt Brutsche. Matt is the owner of 500 Rockets Marketing. Welcome, Matt. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, Matt, let's just start off. Give us that quick introduction. Help us to get to know a little bit about you.
Sure thing. My name is Matt Brutsche. I am CEO of 500 Rockets Marketing Think Tank and Digital Agency. We've recently built two tools in the AI space, one for production grade brand messaging and the other for increasing the ethos of executives. And I like to play golf.
So Matt, before we dive into all that technical jive, what we need to do is find out something about you, personal, that people will learn on our podcast that has nothing to do with work of the industry.
Something so memorable that you will never forget it.
Sure.
Thing about me that is just going to become so memorable, it overcomes the entire podcast.
Pavlovian, if you will.
All right, here it is. In 1978, I went on tour with Led Zeppelin for 6 weeks in Europe. I was 2 years old. I was with my parents. My father was the sound man for Led Zeppelin. It's the most sizzly thing that I have. It is so sizzly, it's not even about me.
That is super awesome. So you were like a 2-year-old roadie.
I was. I remember the train. I remember doing the thing, and I don't remember anything else.
It's pretty awesome.
Before you said 2 years old, I was going, man, he doesn't look old enough for that.
Yeah. What I've realized in that little tidbit is that I could never outlive that coolness. Like I never tried. So I'm always disappointing people because I'm like, well, I'm just not that cool.
Outside of the concert tour world that you got to successfully do at the ripe age of 2, you did mention golf. Now, I'm a golfer myself. I'm a century player now, but I was a 12 handicap. Are you like a scratch player? What's your game?
I am scratch when you raise par to about 88.
Okay. All right. Perfect. That works.
I didn't know you were allowed to change par. Nobody ever told me you could do that. When did that happen?
I take a very Buddhist view of golf. Like for me, it's more about getting mental distance, and it's really just a great excuse to smoke cigars and be alone and not be in front of a computer. That's kind of my whole golf game. But I do just find it to be so fascinating to try and spend your life doing something that is so impressively hard.
Well, Matt, tell us how you came to be involved in the agency world and then how that has evolved into being involved with AI.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I was actually a professional salesperson coming out of my career for the first 10 years. I thought that's what my career was going to be. I had planned it in college. I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I thought that there's a lot of integrity in sales when you do it right. And it was something I wanted to bring to the business world. I actually went around the world for a company and I ended up lying to them because the company went bankrupt. I was like, well, I could do that. You know, if I was going to go around and lie to everybody. It was kind of went through that existential crisis. And around 2005 or 6, my wife was like, you know, you're really technical. Why don't you get into SEO? It was around the time when you could go into a coffee shop and just say the words SEO and walk out with 3 or 4 business cards. Just a lot of demand in the market. And there was just not a lot of real business people in the space. So there's a lot of shadiness. There's this black box mentality, some sort of like secret. And I thought that if I could just go in and be normal and just give really good business advice with really good strategy, that I might have an edge. The first part was really figuring it out. So I went around the US and I took all of the classes I could find, invested big dollars in just trying to figure out the answer. I got the answer, and then I built my career that direction.
So tell us a little bit more then about 500 Rockets Marketing, the kinds of clients you guys serve and the services you provide today.
Yeah, for sure. So when I did that SEO thing, I had a company called Austin Search Marketing, and nobody cared about that company. I cared about that company, but that had about as much sizzle as you could imagine. It's even boring even saying it. So about 5 years ago, I saw a transition in the market. The gimmicks of SEO, the technical advantage of SEO was dissipating. When you get into conversion optimization and you get into big ad spends, you see these things really clearly. You need your message to load on the screen really fast. That's the secret to conversion optimization. What soon becomes after that is what is the message? And that's more branding. So I partnered with a PhD in rhetoric, which is a very handy and weird PhD. but it's very handy when you need to convince people to think, feel, and do things. That was about 5 years ago. That was really the first adventure of getting into, like, that's how we renamed it 500 Rockets. Those two brand names, I was like, oh man, these are completely different. People connected with 500, they didn't connect with the previous one. So it was this transition for me and my agency away from just digital to more into brand work, which we do for small, medium, large companies.
So at IBS, you did a presentation, Matt. You were part of a larger panel group that you worked with, and you guys were talking about AI and specifically about Chat GPT, which has been like all over the place for the last year and a half. People just kind of going nuts. What is the role of Chat GPT to you today, and where should it be kind of for home builders in their tool belt, if you will?
Yeah, we're in a really interesting, and you'll just have to cut me off on this when you're tired of hearing about it, but we have a lot of views on it. The summary is that ChatGPT is devastating in its own right to the marketing agency model. It's devastating to the field of marketing in some much needed ways. It's going to create an entirely new problem set. And it's also going to create a problem set not only in the construction zone, but also in the distribution zone, which I can talk a little bit about if you want me to dive into.
Well, I think you're a little provocative there when you say it's going to just change everything. If I could summarize what you said, I think that's what you said. It's changing everything. We got to unpack that a little bit more. What is everything and how is it changing?
Let me give you a semi-sales pitch, but it's not really a pitch. It's really just makes it easier to say. So can I just do that?
Absolutely.
That would be okay. So for the last 5 years, we've been working on a model called ComZone, which is 5 zones. And I'm gonna give those to you verbally because we've got them down to 1 word each, okay? You have the information zone, you have strategy, construction, distribution, and analytics. Now, that seems like common sense, but if you wanted to make a message, you have to go through those 5 zones. So say there's trash in the front yard. You gathered the information that the trash is in the front yard. You have a strategy that you want your spouse to clean up the trash. You construct a message. Hey, boo, will you go clean that trash up for me? And then you distribute it through your mouth, you say it, and then the analytics come back that they didn't put the trash in the front yard, it was your son, right? Now, this example I just gave you is the problem where all companies break. You have the 5 zones, you go through the 5 zones, but what the analytics zone did was change the information. So a secret to winning an argument is to change the information. So you don't strategically speak to your son or your child like you would your spouse. That's one strategy change. The message wouldn't be the same. You wouldn't distribute it the same. And the analytics would be different because you would be screaming and yelling and demanding that they actually do something rather than speaking to your spouse like that. So when you change the information, everything after it changes. And that's why message quality goes down. So that's a little bit too technical. I know that's a lot of heady work, but here's the reason why I gave you that model. AI has completely eaten the construction zone. So whereas we used to be paid and monetized to construct messages on someone's behalf, now AI can really do that at a level that is unprecedented. Really, no human can compete.
And AI can't get hit in the head with a pan when you tell it to go pick up trash out of the front yard.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, it's a lot less dangerous so far. And then it eventually will become more dangerous, but that's just when the robots come for us.
As a marketer today, how do I balance that idea that am I being replaced? Do I just need to evolve how I approach these problems? There's a quote out there that marketing agencies are going to be gone in just a few years because the AI will do all of it, and you don't need them anymore. And of course, not everybody listening is an agency person. Some of them are in-house marketing people, and they're going, all right, I can cut these bills to my agency down to, nothing or whatever, because I can just tell the computer to do it all for me. So walk us through some of those thoughts and scenarios around that based on this model you've constructed.
Yeah, so I am an optimist, right? And I'm also a pragmatic person. The reality is agencies will exist because people don't want to do all the work. Agencies are also dual function, right? They do a lot of the work, but they also provide a lot of coverage for bad decisions that can be made for the internal marketing team. And if any savvy executive learned a long time ago that the reason why you hire a consultant is so you can fire them. So I'm not super convinced. I'm not on the side that agencies are going to go away, but I can tell you very clearly the problem, in my view, as somebody who owns an agency. And I'll tell it to you in a little bit of a small story here. If I had somebody come into my agency and they said, hey, we want to buy your services. If I was being honest with them, I would say, great. What I want to do is charge you to gather your information. But unfortunately, they wouldn't pay for that. So then we would say, well, okay, we have your information. We need to set a strategy for you. And we'd like to charge you for that. And they're like, no, that's why I'm hiring you, right? And so then we say, okay, well, I have to gather your information and I have to set a strategy. How about I just charge you $30,000 for the website? And they're like, yeah, that sounds great. So even though I had to do the first two zones, they weren't really something that would be monetized previously. I would just sell you the website and then I would wrap all those services into that actual construction. But the monetization of the construction zone has had a nuclear bomb go off in it. So you're not willing to pay $30,000 for the website. I think for the internal marketer and the others, what I have bad news for everybody is it never really cost $30,000 to build the website. But it did cost $30,000 to gather, clean, organize your information, and then apply strategy to it. And so something's going to have to give in the sense of it's still very laborious in order to do some of these things on behalf of businesses. It's very difficult, but I think we're going to have to all reconcile as a group, like what is that new monetization model going to be? Because agencies can't exist without money, but businesses can't overpay for services either. All of this goes to this big kind of train wreck that's going to happen where you have massive quantity, but very low quality. As the consumer gets completely saturated with messages over the next, like the tsunami of messages coming at the consumer is probably unprecedented at this point. I don't think it's hit the market, but all systems as we know it, from my prediction, are going to either break or be worthless or have almost all AI generated content. And so if that's the case and the message can be computer adapted to be this really great Martin Scorsese level ad or something, in order to get that attention from the consumer, the business itself is going to have to really climb the quality ladder. And that sets a different model, which I can also get into, but I've spoken for too long. So there's so much change happening in the market. I can give you a very solid prediction of where this is going, and I can tell you why I believe it, if that would be helpful.
No, I'd love to hear it. What's the prediction? Where's it going and why do you believe it?
Yeah. Okay. So 5 years ago, I'm going to go back to my 5-year story here. 5 years ago, we had a problem. We had customers coming into our agency and they had $2,500 to $5,000 a month, which is fine. You know, it's great. Always want you to have all the money in the world, but you know, everybody starts with the budget. When you looked at best practices across 6 channels and what they needed to produce, from that money, they needed to produce about 2,500 pieces of content a month. So if you wanted to do like your 6 social channels, you want to do blogging, you wanted to have some ad copy, you want to do some press releases, et cetera, you would need as a company to produce 2,500 pieces of content. It was very clear to me that that was not going to happen because we could spend $10,000 and get maybe even a mediocre piece. So we started studying Hollywood models. We went into Hollywood and said, how do you do high quality and high quantity content? What is the secret? And for 5 years, we worked on the comm zone model, which is the output of that study. But the way we got to Hollywood is 5 lily pads. And I'll give those to you verbally, which is going to work perfectly. Everybody's going to absolutely understand it. If you're in the information age and you want to be in the economy, the lowest level of the economy is data. So if we were in the industrial age, we would say the lowest level is oil. So the price of things would be based on oil. In the information age, the price of things is based on the cost of data. The epicenter of data is information. Okay? You guys with me?
Still with you.
All right. Information is not data. This is the first mistake with AI. So if you're trying to put data into AI, you've already made a mistake. It's not data. You have to contextualize it and turn it into information. The epicenter of information is content. So if you want to monetize information, you turn it into content. And the epicenter of content is talent. There's one Michael Jackson, there's one Madonna, there's one Prince.
There's one Kevin Weitzel.
Boom. Thanks for adding me into that group of rock stars.
That's right. To answer your question from before, so the epicenter of content is talent, and the NFL of talent and content is Hollywood. So if you want to understand where we're headed, you can look at Hollywood production models and say, this is a fishbowl. Why can they spend $300 million and make a really bad movie? Why does that exist? Why do the economics work in Hollywood, but businesses break? Why is business thinking a virus to creative thinking? So we studied this for 5 years, and that's where we built the ComZone model of like, how do you move information around? When you plug AI into that model, it works almost perfectly. Like you get incredible content in quantity and quality. So what does that mean, you know?
All right, Matt, going to that, then why did we recently have the whole writer's strike thing where everybody's saying you can't use AI, or at least that's my limited understanding about one of the big issues is they were fighting over that. If it's so good for what's there, is it just simply fear of change? What are your thoughts?
Well, there's a lot of things. One is there's an economy around it. And so they have the power of groups and they have the power to strike, and they saw something that was threatening their livelihood. I think the executives were getting really aggressive on their terms, and they were asking for things that collectively as an industry they needed to reject, like being able to use your image in perpetuity because they simply take your image. I think those type of aggressive things that business people are supposed to ask for, they needed to be combated. I'm not a talented writer, but my co-partner is, and he has a PhD in rhetoric. And when we use AI, we get production grade messaging today. It doesn't need to evolve any further. And it's really because we know how to break it down into its pieces. The only thing that's going to save everybody, and this is why I'm not so worried about the agency model going away completely, and I'm not really worried about creatives being kicked out of the market, is because no matter how you study it, if you look at that model from the lily pads I mentioned earlier, it's still a talent-based economy, and it always will be because content is talent-based.
So here's the question. Here's the crux, the split in the road, if you will. And I need a predictor on this one. Will AI get rid of mediocre agencies, or will it elevate mediocre agencies to become more competitive when they shouldn't be?
So we're in this really weird gap right now that's going to last another 6 months by my estimation. And maybe on the long term, it goes 24 to 36 months. Everybody's going to be doing more. If your marketing agency was $500 or $1,000 a month, and that was the level you were playing at, that agency, instead of doing 2 pieces of content a month, they're going to be delivering you 10 or 15. It's all going to be AI driven, and the quality will probably be subpar and maybe not get you where you need to go. The quantity will go higher. For the higher end agencies, they're ultimately going to have to be able to do more quantity as well, but maintain that quality level. I don't think anything is going to matter except quality plus quantity in the next 6 to 12 months. That's going to require creatives. That's going to require really great talent to be at the epicenter of that process. And that's what I'm building tooling for.
Matt, when you think about the tools that people should be using, ChatGPT did a great job of becoming the buzzword, the name that everybody knows. But there's actually a whole bunch of these tools out there on the market. And it's a little overwhelming actually to try and go through and evaluate and pick one or whatever. But do you have a couple of others that are favorites or that you think marketers should be looking at beyond ChatGPT?
Yeah, I have a very strong view, and it may not be the one you want. Okay. I follow a lot of technology. I'm a technologist. I'm a marketing technologist. That's what I consider myself to be first and foremost. I think ChatGPT is the winner, and I don't care about any other solution. The reason I feel that way is because they've already monetized. So there was like probably 1,000 AIs in the market prior to ChatGPT, just like there was 1,000 search engines before Google. And then the winner comes along and it eats everybody's lunch. And they still have investment dollars and they still have this really great tech stack and they're making all these offers. But ChatGPT got to 100 million users in like 7 days or 30 days. The problem that I see for everybody else is that really they should make a movie about how well ChatGPT executed on their go-to-market strategy. Maybe the best I've ever seen up close. I mean, just executed perfectly. And I think it was due to their partnership with Microsoft and their strategists that they have. But every step that they made was pretty incredible, and they've monetized. So once you monetize and once you get that level of data, your optimization cycles become significantly faster. And so your optimizations are going to become better. And the biggest problem is that it does 100% of what people need today. So you can move to an AI production workflow and get the benefits of it. You can use a private API key with ChatGPT, and like ComZone is a wrapper for ChatGPT. I'm not trying to build AI. I'm basically trying to build, hey, here's some interfaces that you would want to use that are going to make you better, faster, and cheaper so that you can produce higher quality content with more quantity. So my view on AI is like there's thousands of tools and thousands of gimmicks, but you don't need them. This is the big conclusion that maybe everybody's waiting for or wants to know. Like when people think about what their job is, that's the biggest thing that's going to change. My view is that we are no longer constructors of messages. We are librarians. If you're the VP of marketing or you're on the executive team or you own your own business, you want to be thinking, what is the Dewey Decimal System for my business? How can I walk into my business and see every single thing categorized with a really long number and every piece and every decision being written clearly so that everybody can operate in that economy? And I can tell you why that is, but I'm a little heady right now. This may not be as fun as people were hoping for. You know?
No, you're all good. It's interesting that there's kind of these layers, right? There's the large language models that are kind of underneath the tools, and there's other tools that are trying to use the same language models or potentially build their own. Then you've got the tool layer, if you will. These are my words, not some magical thing I've thought up ahead of time. But what you're saying basically is ChatGPT is so far in front that they're going to have the next thing and the next thing and the next thing before everybody else, is what you're kind of expecting to see happen.
Right. I view the construction zone as dead, right? So it's like completely saturated. It's a gladiator style. Everybody's killing everybody with all of these constructed messages. And all of those things are great, but ultimately constructed messages are meant to do one thing, which is persuade people to think, feel, or do. So if you are building messages on behalf of your business, what you're trying to do is persuade people. There's 21 ways to persuade people. We have them documented, right? And there's more, but there's 21 classic ways to actually persuade people. So what you're really trying to do is build messages that are interesting and gather attention. There's probably 100 ways to get attention from people. And then once you have their attention, you can deliver your message. Articles were a way to do that. It was a way that like coincided with your SEO and kind of worked with building your website. And then people could come to your thing and kind of get a sense of your tone and what you were trying to achieve. The article itself, the energy for building 100 articles a month is going away because ChatGPT is a better search experience. So there's some of these tectonic shifts that are happening in the market that are really going to fundamentally change how we behave as businesses, and how we reach those people are going to kind of almost go backwards towards traditional, because you just may not be able to access them through systems that are closed.
And the beauty of ChatGPT being monetized is it doesn't matter if they're the first to market with anything. They don't have to be. Because once you're monetized, somebody else innovates something fantastic, freakishly fantastic, if you will. They just adapt it, copy it, and make it their own.
Yeah, you move to the traditional, there's a study, a really extensive study by Harvard that says if you're going to displace a market leader or you're going to displace a product in the market, your product has to be 100 times better. Literally, it has to be 100x in order to get traction in the market. And once you become the first mover, that's what happens. You implement that model. So what is going to be 100 times better than chat?
Can't wait to see it.
I can't wait. You know, like it's going to walk and talk. I'll tell you that, because chat's pretty incredible.
Well, Matt, this has been a great discussion. As we kind of come in for a finish here, you mentioned that your business partner with this PhD in rhetoric, which I didn't know was a thing. So I learned that today. So thank you. That there's something about what he's able to do using the tool that's a little bit different than what a lot of other people get when they use the tool. Can you give us maybe 2 or 3 tips about what it is that he's doing different in how he prompts it or invites the content or what he gives it to start with that might help us all do a little better?
100%. Yeah. I mean, he was the one who invented the ComZone system. He was a Hollywood comedy writer. He's the best writer I've ever seen. It's really annoying. He can just write like an entire book without using chat. Like he just does it, you know, and it's actually really readable and great. Any PhD, have you ever worked with a PhD, but the number one thing that they do, other than make you really angry, is they break things down into their smaller and smaller pieces until they get it completely identified. They get their entire spectrum identified. And that's what really ComZone is meant to do. It takes your products, your targets, we call them isotopes or your values, and it puts them all into organized structures and folders. And then when you actually go to market to build messaging, you can grab those fundamental pieces and then use AI to transform your message into something that's persuasive. The secret that I see is that you want to take your base level and you want to break it down into what we call fields. So you want to have a product field. A house probably has 10,000 product fields, sub-products to the house. Which one of those things are you going to talk about as part of your brand that aligns to your values and your missions? And then who is your target? What do you want them to think, feel, and do? And then what persuasive methodology are you going to use? Are you going to use logos or pathos or ethos? Are you going to try and emotionally connect with people? Are you going to logically say that we have the best materials? Or are you going to have credibility and put your name on the plaque and say, it was my house and I'm selling it to you so it can be your house? Like, what way are you going to use to persuade people to think, feel, and do? When you break those pieces into smaller and smaller pieces and get them all sussed out, what you realize very, very quickly is that information sprawls. That is the anatomy of information, and that is all that information wants to do is sprawl. And the only thing that's going to stop information from sprawling is decision-making. So internally, you have to have a really strong decision-making framework where everybody can participate, see the information, make decisions on it, understand how those decisions are made, and then move it through the process. That's how you beat the AI giant, is you go into your own business, sit around with your teams, clean your information, get it organized, Dewey Decimal your own information, and then when you take it to the AI engines, you can transform it into anything. You can transform your brand mission into a Shakespearean haiku if you want, and AI will do that perfectly. So your problem isn't construction like you thought it was anymore. Your problem is that your information is not organized. And if you organize your information, you're going to get extraordinary results out of AI today.
What I'm hearing you say then, Matt, is really the core of this is we can't just ask it a question or say, write me something about X. Right? We have to give it all the foundational materials that are ours and ours alone that belong to our company, our brand, our product, and be able to then say, because you now AI know A, B, and C, now do the message. And you will get the higher quality, more on target type of message. Is that a fair kind of restate?
That's exactly right. So like, not to like sell you ComZone, but I desperately need people to buy it. I'm just kidding. I'm not. I need you. No, I'm desperate. That's actually really all it does at its base level. So it allows you to store files. And then it says, when I'm building a message, use these files first. And it uploads those as the system message to prime the AI so that when you actually ask it for an output, it actually gives you a higher quality message. And that's the secret. But then the question becomes, well, what structures do you store your information in? And how do you organize your information in order to be AI ready? And that's harder and easier than you think, but that is the secret to using AI, is that if you feed it with your own data first, you become production ready.
If our listeners can choose to relate this to a different scenario, instead of programmatically plugging everything into these 5 channels into your AI, think of just the simple fact that you want to have real-time pricing on your website. If you want to have real-time pricing, you can't take it from various spreadsheets and the estimator has some things in his brain and or ERP that can't connect to anything because it doesn't allow any API integration. If you don't have those tools in place, you can't get the desired outcome. So you have to have the file structure in place. I totally get it.
Yeah, and you have to have somebody to contextualize, especially with brand messaging. And when you start trying to persuade people, we're sitting here for 30 minutes and everybody's already gone. They've already turned it off. And they're like, this is just too much information. I don't, you can overwhelm people with information, which is a specialty of mine. Thank you. I like to do that. It's almost impossible to get everything down to like one sentence, right? Which is why you hire people. You're like, I just can't get my brand across. I just can't communicate my value. Well, that's the hard work, getting it from all of that data down to one sentence. But that's what requires the team to get together and understand your customer And that's why, like, I even at the speech at the trade show, I was like, if your idea is to use AI as a salesperson, you and I are not aligned. I don't really want to buy from you, and I don't really want to work with you. I don't want AI calling me. I don't want to talk to an AI salesperson. That's not what I want personally. I want a connection, and I want you to understand what I want as a customer. So if people are going to market and you know your customer better than anybody else, you're going to do really well in an AI universe, because you can take all that knowledge and you can actually spread that further around your company in a way that you never have before. Even just interviewing the engineers, or interviewing the guys swinging the hammer, or interviewing all those people, taking their nuggets of like what's really going on, what they like about the house, what do they like about the floor plan, what made it great working there, what made it great building that, taking that level of your brand and then turning that into messaging that could be then shared on social or shared on these other areas. That type of continuity and transformation of our message, it's really never been as easy as it is. But if you don't have an eye for quality, oh, it's going to get bad. And one bad message can opt people out.
No, that's true. It doesn't take long to push people away if they're not getting value and quality, for sure. Well, Matt, do you have any last words of advice that you wanted to share with our listeners today before we wrap up?
Yeah, here's my wisdoms, right? Your enemy is information sprawl, and decision-making inside your business is what's going to give you a competitive edge. So focus on that. You don't really even need to worry about the AI. The AI is going to do what the AI does. It's what you and your company says and the values that it needs to bring to market that other people are going to connect with. Really spending time sitting around the boardroom and getting those things documented, to me, will get you a lot greater gains than anything else.
Well, thank you again for being with us. If people want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out and get in touch?
500rockets.io is my agency website. I would love for people to take a gander at comzone.app, see if it's a good layer for them to check out. We're going to have some big stuff here in about a week.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And thank you everybody for listening today to the Home Builder Digital Marketing Podcast. I'm Greg Bray with Blue Tangerine.
I'm Kevin Weitzel with Outhouse. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about how Blue Tangerine and Outhouse can help you generate more qualified home buyer leads, visit bluetangerine.com and outhouse.net. If you've enjoyed our show today, please tell a friend, leave us a review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Be sure to join us again on the Home Builder Digital Marketing Podcast.